And welcome to the Municipality of Thames Centre regular council meeting on Monday, January 31st, 2022 at 5 p.m. And I know this date will be welcome to a lot of our local restaurants and businesses and recreation facilities that have been affected by the last regulations, but now we're opening up again, and I'm going to encourage everyone to make sure that you get out there cautiously with your masks and your social distancing, but to get out there and go to the businesses and go to those places that we haven't been able to get to. So again, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Are there any additions to the agenda?
There are no additions.
Okay. Do we have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Any announcements? Deputy Mayor Elliott, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The announcement tonight is I've had the very big privilege of being able to work with Michael Landsberg the last few weeks, and he will be virtually attending Middlesex County the next 2 nights to do a motivational speech on mental health, and he has a great lineup of guest speakers joining him. Tomorrow night, the talk is at 4:00 p.m. and it's geared towards high school students, and then on Wednesday night, the talk is at 7:00 p.m. and that is geared towards parents and guardians of teenagers. Anyone is welcome to attend, and you can find the links on Middlesex County's social media in order to register.
Okay, thank you, and it sounds like a great event. Any other announcements? Seeing none, we're going to move into the public meeting. So we have a meeting to consider the Judge Drain Branch F. So I'm looking for, do I have a motion to go into public? No, okay, good. So I'm going to ask now our engineer, who I see on the screen, welcome Mike, to give us an overview of the work required.
Okay, thank you. This report was prepared in accordance with Section 4 of the Drainage Act for a new municipal drain. It is a branch of the existing Judge Drain. There was a property on the north side of Dundas Street that is east of Shaw Road that petitioned to have a proper outlet in terms of a legal outlet into the existing Judge Drain. It is a tile drain designed as an agricultural drain for the area. The property in question is looking to have development occur, so they will be required to do stormwater management on their property to reduce the flows leaving to basically the capacity of the pipe up to a certain level of storm, at which point some of the surface water might start being released. Because the stormwater management facilities have elevated flows for significant periods, there will be what's called over control to help reduce that effect downstream, because there is farmland downstream that could be impacted by increased surface flows. So there is restriction and calculations and release levels that are shown in the report. The drain itself physically is a very short, small drain. It's 73 meters of 8-inch diameter pipe heading from the existing Judge Drain, heading west parallel to the north side of Dundas Street on the Wills property, heading to the petition property. And stop and open up to questions.
Okay, any questions regarding that report? Go ahead, Travis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Floyd Wills was having some technical difficulties entering the meeting, and he had prepared a comment here for council, and I let him know I would read that verbatim to you and allow comments if that's acceptable.
Go ahead.
Okay. He writes, over the past 2 years, when preliminary excavation was begun on the property in question, as owner of the neighboring property to the east, we experienced severe flooding during several storm events, resulting in notable crop damage. It is my feeling, therefore, that before any further excavation and construction is conducted, drainage systems servicing the entire 3.6 hectares be required. Other than the aforementioned concern, I have no other objections to the proposed development. That is all.
Okay, so if I understand Mr. Wells correctly, he's hoping to have additional drainage work on top of the original application?
Yeah, it's my understanding that he is looking to have the entire site serviced under this report. However, right now, the area requiring drainage is only the developing area of this site.
Okay, so Mr. DeVos is here, so I think maybe he would be the best one to comment on this comment. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, sure. The development itself is looking to be done in 2 phases. Currently, they are looking to do only the phase closer to Dundas Street, a smaller development, with future development occurring farther north away from the road. The pipe itself and the release flows that we've calculated are after phase 2, so after the entire property is developed. So eventually, the entire property basically will be coming to the new municipal drain. In the interim, until grading and future pipes are put on the development property, there is no mechanism to get that water internally on the site down to the municipal drain. And I believe that the landowner is looking to make sure that the developer does something on an interim basis to try and get the water down to the new branch now rather than later in phase 2. As a landowner, that particular property, the Wills property, does not have to accept surface water onto the property. They could burn the water off and stop it from coming. It would be more realistic to work with the adjacent landowners, the petitioning landowners, to try to get them to do something on their site now to stop that surface water from leaving their property and somehow diverting it to the municipal drain. Those future works that were referred to would be internal private piping, most likely on their site. So it's not something that I have control over as the engineer. I can only act on a petition, and the only way I could deal with it is if the adjacent landowner actually petitioned through the act, the Wills property would petition, then I could act. But you would not want it to get that far. You would hope that the landowners could agree amongst themselves to do something privately to make that occur.
Okay, so just to clarify, there's no municipal drain in the area that Mr. Wills is talking about?
If you look at the plan that is included as part of our package, there's a dashed line that's basically referred to, everything south of that is referred to as phase 1, and then everything to the north of that is referred to as phase 2. It's all internal to the design, the tributary area that will ultimately come to the pipe. It's just that in the interim during phase 1, there's nothing in place physically on the property to divert the water down to this drain. What's happening now is water is moving easterly off of their land, off the development land, moving easterly into the Wills property further north away from the road. So it's a problem that's not necessarily near our drain, but it definitely has something to do with what water's supposed to be coming to our drain ultimately.
Okay, so he can put a berm up temporarily or to stop that water coming, is that what you said?
Yeah, he could. You would hope that it wouldn't get to that point. I would think that hopefully, discussions could be held between the two properties, and an easier, more long-term solution could be looked at rather than doing that, and maybe having some partial grading on the property. But that would need cooperation from the two lands. Ultimately, if cooperation can't be obtained, he could either build a berm or petition for new drainage works further away from the road. So, you would hope it wouldn't get down to that stage, but right now I don't have the control in my report stage to be able to do that.
Okay, but he would have the ability to do another petition if necessary?
If necessary, if he felt that he would be obligated to do that, he could, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments, Mr. Pitt?
No, I think that summarized it very well.
Okay, and so there was no other comments from Mr. Wills, according to you, Mr. Pitt?
That was everything.
Okay. All right, so council, we have a recommended motion in front of us First set, the report PWDR 00122 prepared by the Drainage Superintendent dated January 31st, 2022 concerning a meeting to consider the Judge Drain Branch F 2021 be received for information. And that the drainage report for the Judge Drain Branch F 2021 as prepared by Spreed Associates dated October 28th, 2021 be received and adopted, and that the first sitting of the Court of Revision on behalf of the Judge Drain Branch F 2021 be scheduled to be held on February 14th, 2022 at 1 p.m. Looking for a mover? Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any comments or questions? Call the vote. In favor? So carried. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Good night.
Right. Now we have a delegation from the Dorchester Cooperative Nursery School, and the speakers for the delegation are Melissa Capello and Rosie McCluskey. And welcome, ladies.
Thank you very much for having us and giving us the opportunity to speak today. I'm Rosie McCluskey, and I'm on this call with Melissa Capello on behalf of the Dorchester Nursery School. I've been a teacher with the nursery school now for approximately 7 years. And we are here to present some new and exciting opportunities for the school that'll benefit our co-op as well as our community. As an employee of the nursery school, there have been many challenges with the school operating as a co-op. And prior to COVID, and of course the pandemic, we have had difficulties with parents helping with the designated duties as required by the executive and also our bylaws. Parents have had no interest in taking on the assigned cleaning days, trying to find parents to join our executive, which is required by a co-op, is next to impossible as parents don't have any time because they want to spend more time with their families and they're obligated to their own families. Parents simply do not want to do the work, and we are here to, change that up. The executive position is a volunteer position and it requires a lot of work. It's a huge time commitment that parents are not willing to commit to with their own busy families. Therefore, we come to you today to propose a change in regards to the nursery school, making the school a profitable business, yet keeping the nursery school running the same as it always has, but not facing the challenges we are encountering these past few years. We also do realize any changes that will be required will be ministry approved. We're also aware that we will be entering into a similar agreement with Mr. McDonald's regarding our lease. Now I'll hand it over to Melissa Capello to discuss our vision.
Rosie. So moving forward, we'd like the opportunity to offer Thames Center with the nursery school with potential change in operating hours, as well as other activities. We'd like after-school art programs, craft classes, seasonal workshops, team building programs, drop-in center for weekend hockey and ringette, parent and toddler programs. We're very open to any and all suggestions offered by the community, the I Love Dorchester group, and families currently enrolled in our nursery school. We have 2 ECs in our program currently who are looking for hours, so this gives them an opportunity, as well as co-op high school students' potential work experience. Rosie and I are very eager to move forward with this opportunity. Being a mother of 4 young children living in this community, I see a need for more programs for kids and families. Thank you all for your meeting with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And I would agree with you that space is a wonderful space and there's lots of opportunities that could be done there. So kudos to you for thinking of all these different ideas to be able to use it. Council, do we have any questions for Rosie or Melissa? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Yes, Mayor Work, what's the current lease agreement? I'm trying to understand what's happening here. Like, can't they just do anything they want, or like, I'm not sure why this is coming for council.
I see Councillor Patterson that Director McDonald has come on the screen now, so we're going to let him answer that question.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Your Worship, the current lease agreement is a 5-year agreement that we entered into just this past July. And one of the reasons this is coming before council is the agreement is with the co-op. So if Rosie and Melissa, proceed without the co-op, then we'd be entering into a new agreement. And one of the clauses in the agreement is if there's any change in who's running it, that obviously it has to come back to council for a new agreement.
Any other questions, Councillor Patterson?
No, not at this time.
Okay. All right, any other comments, council? Okay, so in front of us, we have a recommended motion that the information from the Dorchester Cooperative Nursery School delegation be received as information, and that council direct the director of community services and facilities to continue working with the DCNS, and that the director of community services and facilities be requested to prepare a report for future council meeting that includes recommendations for a revised facility license agreement. So moved by Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All in favor? So moved. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you very much.
And now I'd like a motion that council adjourn its regular meeting in order to sit as a committee of adjustment under the Planning Act. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Okay. So our first item is a public hearing for a minor variance application A2321. And it's, I'm going to state the following. To assist with the meeting process tonight, there's a 5-minute limit on time on any questions, comments, concerns. We encourage you to only participate in speaking tonight if you have new additional information not already addressed. I'm going to advise that the purpose of this hearing is to consider an application for minor variances submitted by the applicant, Donna Wiley, in the property location 229 Upper Queen Street in Thorndale. So I'm going to ask our planning director to provide an overview of the application.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through this application, the applicant is seeking relief from the Thames Centre zoning bylaw as it relates to the side yard width requirement for accessory buildings to recognize the detached garage that is currently under construction. The subject property, it's a corner lot situated on the south side of Upper Queen Street and on the east side of Agnes Street in the village of Thorndale. This property contains a single detached dwelling, which is serviced by municipal water and sanitary sewers, and an accessory building in the form of a detached garage currently under construction, as well as a above ground swimming pool located in the rear yard. This property under the official plan, Your Worship, is designated residential, and it's zoned for residential purposes under the R1 category. So the applicant has applied for this variance considering the detached garage has a deficient side yard of 0.3 meters from the easterly lot line, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a side yard of at least 1 meter. So just to recap, a building permit was issued to allow construction of the detached garage with a side yard of 2.14 meters as confirmed from survey bars found on the property. In response to concerns raised by the immediate neighbor at 231 Upper Queen Street through the pouring of the concrete base to accommodate the building, it was later determined that the building under construction was situated closer to the property line, as confirmed by an Ontario land surveyor retained by the applicant at the request of the municipality. The surveyor concluded, Your Worship, that the survey bars had been disturbed and were out of place. And the surveyor has since repositioned the survey bars to their proper location, resulting in the building being too close to the side lot line, hence the need for this variance application. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as noted in my report, and I'm not satisfied that all of the tests, all of the 4 tests under the Planning Act have been met. So there certainly is concern in that regard. As a result, I am not in a position to support this application. Therefore, I'm recommending that the application be denied. I should point out that should this variance be allowed by council, compliance with the Ontario Building Code will be required, as noted by the chief building official, which could be an added expense to the applicant. As a potential solution, Your Worship, it's important to note that the neighbor at 231 Upper Queen Street, if the price is right, may be willing to consider selling a 0.7 meter strip of land to the applicant to ensure zoning compliance. And in addition to the price of the land, there would be legal and surveying costs, as well as the need to apply for a consent application, which has a processing fee of $2,000. During the circulation of the application to agencies, there were no issues identified during the circulation process, save and except for the chief building official. He has noted that if approved, the contractor will be required to change the current construction of the building to meet Ontario Building Code requirements by submitting a new design for review and reconstructing a portion of the building to ensure we've got non-combustible material and a fire resistance rating. In the circulation of the application to the public, Your Worship, to surrounding property owners, we did receive a submission from the immediate neighbor, Carlos Liftafla. And those comments, I believe, were provided to council in advance of this meeting. If not, they're included as part of the agenda. And just to summarize, he notes that recognizing that the municipality approved and allowed the applicant to construct the building in its current location, the municipality should bear the cost to relocate the garage, in his opinion. So as noted in my report, Your Worship, it's my recommendation that the application be denied for the reasons outlined in my report. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant here, Alan?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Are there any other members of the public in attendance?
Yes, Your Worship. I have Carlos Latfala.
Okay, does he wish to speak?
I am bringing him over right now.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. I don't really have anything to add. On top of Mark, I think he's summarized everything.
Thank you. All right, any of the committee members have any questions regarding this application? So just maybe Mr. Bancroft, I just have one question. At what point in construction is this garage currently at?
Your Worship, the building is basically nearing completion, with the exception of there needs to be cladding constructed on, at the very least, the side of the building that is subject to the encroachment. I believe also the roof needs to be finished on the building as well.
Okay.
Even
So,
though there's temporary cladding in place on the roof, as indicated by the applicant in discussions with her. But that's basically the condition of the building currently.
okay. And I know that reading through the whole thing, there's been a lot of different twists and turns to this application, so to speak. And I just have some concerns about it. But I see Deputy Mayor Elliott's got her hand up, so I'm going to go ahead and let the floor go to her.
Thank you. And through Your Worship, I had an extensive discussion with our Director of Planning and Development this afternoon, as well as I spoke with the applicant regarding this. And I think from my perspective, the applicant is kind of in a no-win situation here. Either if council decides to move ahead and approve this, she's going to have to go through some costs to upgrade the building to fire codes and to follow along with the Ontario Building Code as the director laid out. If we don't approve it, then she has to take down the garage. And I think that her neighbor was kind enough to put a solution on the table that possibly he could look at selling a sliver of land to put it within the zoning bylaw. The applicant also had mentioned there are other solutions she's willing to look at, and I think it's worthwhile. And I would when we're ready to make a decision, I would put forward a motion to defer this and to direct staff to go back to the applicant and find a way to make this work instead of council making a decision here. I think there's a way that we can get around this and so it works out for the applicant as well as her neighbor as well.
Well, currently, I can't see anybody winning on this one, like whether it's the applicant, the neighbor, or us. Like this is a bit more of a discussion than what we have in our front of us tonight. So I think getting more information and having our director of planning reach out to the people involved and seeing what else, what other solutions can be brought forward would be a good idea at this point in time. So I would have to agree with that deferment. Any other comments from council? Councillor Patterson?
Yeah, the property, I'm assuming to the east, is it a residential lot there? Is there a house on that lot?
Through you, your worship. So the property to the east is a residential lot. There's a single detached dwelling on the property currently.
Okay. Any follow-up, Councillor Patterson?
No, not at this time.
Okay. So did you want to make that motion, Deputy Mayor Elliott?
Through you, yes, I would like to make the motion that the application for minor variance A2321 submitted by Donna Wiley be deferred and that our Director of Planning and Development be directed to find other solutions and discussions with the applicant and bring a report, and if need be, bring a report back to council at an additional meeting.
Okay. The clerk, you've got that? Okay. I do have a seconder for that motion. Councillor Hunter? Okay. And knowing that we've deferred that, do we have to do the 20-day written notice or the decision? Just out of curious before I go call the vote. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Against? Okay. So moved and carried. And now I don't have to worry about the appeal period. So now I'm going to ask for a resolution to adjourn and reconvene as a public meeting under the Planning Act. Councillor Hunter, second by Councillor Patterson. All in favor? All right, so this is public meeting, the consent application B2521. And the purpose of this public meeting is to consider an application for consent as submitted by the applicant, Mike and Connie Bonche, care of Michael Bonche, agent Stuart Finlater, and the property is located at 16760 Whiten Drive. I'm going to ask the planning director to provide an overview of applications, comments received, and planning recommendation.
Thank you, your worship. So this is an application to convey a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of a farm consolidation. So the subject property, it's a 64-acre farm located on the north side of Whiten Drive and on the west side of Missouri Road. The applicant is proposing to convey a parcel of land having an area of 3.5 acres, containing a single detached dwelling and a number of farm buildings. And the balance of the farm, used primarily for the cultivation of field crops, it would have an area of about 60.5 acres. These lands were previously subject to application for consent B5/18, which was also sought to facilitate the disposal of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation. And although that application was granted conditionally by the municipality, that consent lapsed, as conditions of consent were not satisfied within a year as required by the legislation. So the applicant is therefore reapplying for this consent as originally requested. And in my review of the consent B5/18, there was a concern over the size of the lot to be severed, which was to be reduced in size as a condition of that consent. And since this request is simply a reapplication of that original consent, I remain concerned about the size of the lot to be severed. As a whole, the property is designated agricultural under the official plan. and through application for rezoning Z6/18, which was heard concurrently with the original consent application, the balance of the farm was rezoned to an A-45 site-specific agricultural category and environmental protection EP zone, including a row of mature trees, whereas the lot to be severed, it remains zoned agricultural. That A-45 zone was required to ensure that no new residential use can be constructed on the balance of the farm, consistent with provincial and local planning policies. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as noted under Section 3 of my report, and both provincial policy as well as the county and municipal official plans, they all generally permit lot creation in agricultural areas. In this situation, as a result of farm consolidation, subject to criteria. Now, with the exception of the size of the lot to be severed, I'm satisfied that the criteria has been met. To ensure that the lot to be severed is limited in size to accommodate the residential use, a condition of consent is recommended, that the frontage and area be reduced so that we end up with a frontage of 233 feet and an area of just over 2 acres in size. The effect of which the proposed westerly lot line would lie between the row of mature trees and the row of younger trees. The concern, Your Worship, is in allowing additional lands that could otherwise be converted to agriculture in the future. Should those lands be included with the residential lot, then their ability to be farmed is lost forever. In terms of other issues, Your Worship, pertaining to the location of the septic system, the well, removal of farm buildings, those are capable of being addressed through conditions of consent. Also, as noted about the current zoning of the property through that previous rezoning application, there's no need to rezone the subject lands, considering the balance of the farm would prohibit any new residential use. So provided that there's a reduction in size for the lot to be severed, I'm satisfied that the subject application would be consistent with the provincial policy statement and in conformity with the county and Thames Centre official plans. Through the circulation of the application to agencies, Your Worship, there were only really 2 issues identified. One from the county engineer. He's requesting as a condition of consent a required widening dedication, pretty standard, up to 18 meters from center line of construction of Missouri Road, which is County Road 27, across the property to the County of Middlesex for the purposes of road widening if the right-of-way is not already to that width. And then the other point from the chief building official, he's noted that the applicant will be required to uncover the septic tank lid and the 4 corners of the septic bed to confirm the location of the bed and tank and to ensure that the septic system is functioning correctly. Also, a requirement about the removal of agricultural buildings. In the circulation to members of the public, there were no concerns identified from the public. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that the consent application be approved. My report makes a note of 8 conditions, one of which includes reduction of the size of the frontage and area. The second condition that I want to mention is one that is actually not included, requiring the need for a widening dedication, which would be a reflection of the request by the county engineer, Your Worship. So if that additional widening condition can be included so that we end up with a total of 9 conditions altogether, and that the application be approved based on the reasons that are outlined in my report. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have the agent here. Is there any additional information you'd like to provide?
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. Yeah, I'd first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Bancroft for his summary of the application and his recommendation for its approval. The only concern my clients have is with condition number 2, and that's the condition being recommended by Mr. Bancroft that the lot frontage be reduced from 106 meters to 71 meters. The frontage as proposed follows an existing mature tree line along the western edge of the proposed lot. Those trees are estimated to be over 40 years old and as such have effectively defined the area used for the residential purposes for at least that length of time. Those lands have not been farmed for, we're not sure if ever they've been farmed. So it's my professional opinion that the lot area and frontage as applied for is consistent with the PPS policy that deals with surplus farm dwelling severances. It states the new lot will be limited to the size needed to accommodate the use and the appropriate sewer and water services. And it's my suggestion to you that that land that's defined by the tree line is used for the residential purposes. And there's no need for that line to be drawn in 30 meters to another row of trees that the Bonjis planted themselves about 25 years ago. You know, there's similar wording in the Thames Center official plan regarding surplus farm dwelling severances, but it actually goes on further to state that the inclusion of cultivated agricultural lands shall be kept to a minimum. So it doesn't prohibit it, it just says should be kept to a minimum. So, you know, the Thames Center official plan would appear to be okay even with including some cultivated lands, which we're not proposing. Like there's no lands that are being farmed being included with this proposed severance. And I just point out that nowhere in any document, the PPS, the county plan, or the Thames Center official plan, is there a maximum lot area stipulated. And therefore each application should be reviewed and judged on its own merits. Given the clearly defined residential area, as outlined by the mature trees on 3 sides of this proposed new lot, it's my professional opinion that this application meets all of the relevant planning policies and should be approved for as applied, and that condition 2 should be removed from the final decision of the committee. You know, the PPS, the surplus farm dwelling policy in the PPS is clearly meant to avoid taking out cultivated lands for the creation of a residential lot. Fully understand that. If that mature tree line was not there, we wouldn't be talking about it, but it's there and it's been there for many years. And that land has been used as part of this residential use for many years. And so to suggest that it should be brought back 30 meters in for the possibility that it might be converted to agricultural land at some point in the future, I don't think that's relevant. I don't think that's what the PPS intended. I don't think that's what the Thames Center official plan intended. So again, I would just ask council to approve the application as applied for. We're satisfied with the other conditions. We don't have any concerns. Other than the one question I would have for Mr. Bancroft, if I may, is the issue of uncovering the septic tank and identifying the 4 corners of the septic bed. I've never seen that as part of a condition before. And I'm just wondering, is there a specific reason why that's being requested?
Through you, Your Worship, it's a requirement to ensure that the septic system is wholly contained on the lot to be severed. And it's a simple fact of ensuring that there's confirmation that it meets the required setback. I believe the setback under the Ontario Building Code is 3 meters from a lot line. So simply put, that's a standard procedure requirement in terms of ensuring that the septic system is wholly contained and, you know, operational on the lands to be conveyed. And again, that's standard procedure, Your Worship.
Yeah, I would agree. It's standard procedure to make sure that it's fully contained within the lot, but I've never seen a condition which actually says you have to uncover them. So It's just a question. I've talked to my clients about it. If it has to be done, they're prepared to do it. But in my 35 years of working for the municipality, I've never seen the condition worded that way. That's my only point. So other than that, your worship, I don't have anything further to add. I would just ask that you look at the land as it lays, and I don't think that it's necessary or appropriate that the frontage be reduced. And that's all I have to say. And I don't know, your worship, whether the Bondies have anything they want to say, but I'll leave that up to you to go from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And welcome to Connie and Mike, who must have very good internet, because that's a very good picture we're getting of them. Do you have any additional information you want to provide?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, it's country internet. We have no further information to add other than what our Mr. Finlater has talked about. We are open to any questions that council may have for us.
Thank you. All right. Any members from the public in attendance, Alan?
No, your worship.
Okay. So council members, any comments or questions? Emer Elliott?
Through your worship, I'll just speak to when we talk about the size of the lot. I think the intention when we created the surplus farm dwellings was so that we didn't create large rural properties that allowed hobby farms. And so, but again, the merit has to be given to each application. This isn't really a small, nice envelope of land. It's the buildings are kind of all over the place. And I'll just say that, you know, having trees, mature trees surrounding rural properties with agricultural land is very common. It protects the residential lot. And I would be supportive of removing condition 2 and allowing the trees to stay with the property, with the residential property.
Councillor Patterson, did you have your hand up?
No questions at this time.
Thank you. I did go and look at the actual application myself, and one comment I have is, you know, the length of this application is taking throughout the years. So trees, the younger trees are no longer younger. They're growing every year. And to me, the trees that were there are trees that usually like to grow in low-lying watery areas, which farms have, and it to me looked like a low-lying area. So to cultivate that would be a lot of additional work for anybody who wished to farm that, as probably Councillor Hunter could attest to. And I see no difficulty keeping the extra row of trees beside the mature trees as this application. So I too would support number 2 being adjusted to that. Oh, just a second. Councillor Hunter, did you have your hand up? Councillor Patterson, or who wants to go ahead first? Okay, Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
What's the application? How many, what's the frontage they're asking for? Is it
106 meters, Councillor Patterson.
106 meters? Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Hunter, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would tend to agree with the mayor and the deputy mayor, but that row of trees has been there for 40 years. Keeping it with the farm or with the lot, it really, I don't think it's going to make a difference one way or the other. The farmland isn't going to be able to farm where the trees are, and the residential lot, it's going to be a benefit to the residential lot, if anything. So that'd be my comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we need then a motion that would eliminate number 2. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, Your Worship, it would be a motion to amend the original motion to include condition 9 and then remove condition 2, if that's what council wants to do.
Okay, the councilor's wishes.
So I'll make that motion. Oh.
Just a question. What's condition 9? What does that mean?
Condition 9 was the additional one of the
Road widening.
which was it? The road winding from the county engineer. just in case we ever put 4-lane highway down Whiten Drive.
I'll make that motion to remove condition 2 and to add condition, well, it'll technically be condition 8 for the road widening along Missouri Road, the dedication of land.
Seconder for that motion? Counselor Hunter, I'm going to call the vote. Any other questions?
I do have a question.
Yep.
Mayor. If we're removing condition 2, it doesn't say how the lot can be. So it could be 200 meters, it could be 106, it could be 7. Like, that's what I'm confused about.
Yeah, I think the applicant's agent has his hand up.
Yeah, Councillor Patterson, we've applied for a specific lot size, which is 106 meters in frontage and 128 meters in depth, and that's what we've applied for. So that's all that we can do. Mr. Bancroft was suggesting to council that it should be reduced to approximately 71 meters. And I guess what council is discussing now is it going to be 71 meters or is it going to be 106 meters? We can't just create a lot any different than what we've applied for.
Okay, so does that answer your question, Councillor Patterson?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mayor.
I think our clerk has an understanding of what we've mentioned, and so we've had a mover, we've had a seconder, and now we're going to call the vote. So in favor? So carried. So the public meeting portion of this application has been completed, and then council has made their decision considering all the comments received. And then I'm going to advise that written notice of the decisions will be forwarded to designated parties. And there's a 20-day appeal period from the date of notice to the decision. You may request to be notified of the decision by emailing the clerk. Thank you. Now we have the public meeting for a zoning application Z2821. And the purpose of this public meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment as submitted by Alexander Chernovi. I should have practiced this name before we started today. And Valentina Chernovia, the agent being Harrison Chernovi, and the property location is 2005 Westchester Bourne. So I'm going to ask the planning director to provide an overview of application and planning recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose and effect of this rezoning application is to amend the provisions of the existing site-specific general commercial GC 1-11 zone to add a vehicle sales / rental establishment and a converted dwelling as new permitted uses in addition to all other uses that are permitted under the current zoning. The subject property, it's a corner lot situated on the west side of Westchester Bourne, County Road 74, and on the north side of Sage Street in the hamlet of Nilestown. The property contains a single detached dwelling and a large metal clad building. And also the property is privately serviced with its own well and septic system. The applicants are proposing to move their used car dealership to this location and also convert the existing single detached dwelling into 2 separate dwelling units. Uses permitted under the current zoning include a wide range of commercial uses, along with a single unit dwelling and a marine sales and service establishment. The site previously contained a boat sales establishment, which was also subject to site plan approval and permitted under the current zoning. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as noted in my report, and both the provincial policy statement and the county official plan, they generally support an extensive range of land uses and designated settlement areas, including residential, commercial, and industrial uses. And also under the Thames Center official plan, these lands are designated hamlet. So in all, this proposal is generally consistent with provincial policy and the county plan. Under the Thames Center official plan as well, under the hamlet settlement area, it does allow for a range of uses, including low-density residential uses and commercial at an appropriate scale. The surrounding area, it includes a number of non-residential uses, commercial in nature, as well as residential uses. Therefore, what's being proposed would not be out of character with the area. And from an impact standpoint, the proposed used car dealership would be comparable to the range of commercial uses that are permitted as of right under the current zoning. As it applies to the introduction of a second dwelling unit, provincial policy provides direction to encourage an appropriate range and mix of housing types. And that's also echoed under the County of Middlesex official plan. It also encourages a wide range of housing types to meet the broad demographic and market requirements of current and future residents. Moving right along, under the official plan, it includes criteria used to evaluate rezoning applications. So in all, your worship, I'm satisfied that that criteria has been met, or it is capable of being met through the building permit process. So in all, I'm satisfied that the proposal is consistent with provincial policy, conforms to the county official plan, as well as the Thames Center official plan. In the agency's circulation of this application, your worship, no issues were identified except for by the chief building official. He has noted that the municipality has no record of a septic system for the property, and staff will be requesting that soil testing and verification that a septic system can be installed on the property by an engineer be provided. Building permits will also be necessary for the renovation of the existing building to be converted. From the public, your worship, we did receive some feedback from a couple of neighboring property owners, from Larry and Karen Knott, as well as Carolyn Anderson. So in all, they had some questions about the nature of the operation of the used car dealership, such as what the hours of operation would be, and also how many cars would be stored on site. I think the applicant is better suited to answer those questions. They did also have questions about the area to accommodate the used cars. That would be limited to not interfere with the driveway access and the parking area. And they also had, I wanted to clarify that through this rezoning, automotive repair is not permitted. It's not permitted under the current zoning, and it would not be permitted as a result of, should council approve this zone change request. So it is my recommendation, your worship, that the application be approved in principle, and that I be given direction to prepare the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have the agent with us, Alan?
No, your worship.
Okay, so no additional information to provide. Any members of the public in attendance who have questions?
Yes, your worship. I have Michelle Anderson.
Okay, great.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So do you have a question that you would like to? Okay.
So you've answered a few of our questions here. So I'm speaking on behalf of myself, my husband, and my in-laws who live directly across from the site that we're talking about. So we're concerned, obviously, about it, the appearance. We didn't get an answer there about what will the number of vehicles that will be allowed on the site. Do we have an answer about that one?
Mark, do we have anything to
So your
add to that?
worship, in terms of the number of vehicles, There is site plan approval currently in place dealing with the placement of boats on the property.
Right.
I know we're talking about cars now, but ultimately the placement of cars cannot obstruct the access to the site, cannot obstruct the driveway. Also, landscaped open space areas. And also the storage of cars, it has to be wholly contained on private property. It cannot spill over onto the road allowance, either on the county side or the municipal side. So.
Okay, and so if there was issues with this, who would be looking after it? Like, will we have to make a complaint, or is it going to be monitored?
Well, I can start to answer that, but if I'm wrong, Mr. Bancroft can correct me. That would be something that our bylaw officers would be in charge of. However, our bylaw officers don't drive around looking for infractions. So if somebody saw something that was against what we've discussed, then that would be an issue for a complaint, and they would go ahead and investigate.
Okay. Sorry. So we don't have a number. Do you want an actual number? Is that what you're, sorry. We were just wondering, like,
I think I understand what you're saying, is that
like
you're wondering. Yeah.
Like, we're looking at it, right? It's hard to say. If you don't have an actual number, how are we to say that's too much? Like, we're not bylaw experts here. We're looking at it from our window, and we don't want it to look like a junkyard. So it would be nice if we had a number for that. We're also wondering about the projected hours of operation. Do you have those?
To your worship, I don't have that information.
Okay, that's pretty
I would
concerning.
imagine, like, usually used car dealerships operate based on normal business hours, so I would anticipate that would also be the case.
Okay, again, it would be nice if we had an actual, like, this is pretty serious, like the changes in our neighborhood, we'd like to have an actual answer for that. We're also wondering about the remodel of the existing house. It's a very small house. How is this going to be turned into a 2-unit dwelling?
Again, I think some of the questions you're answering are very good questions, but not something that can be answered by council as opposed to the hours of businesses. We don't regulate the hours of businesses. And as far as meeting the requirements for the building code, that would be something done through our building inspector. So any proposed construction has to be meeting with our standards for our builder. And if there's anything you can add to that, Mr. Bancroft, go ahead.
I have nothing further to add, your worship. You've provided that information in such great fashion that I've got nothing further to add in that regard.
Okay, so when do I get answers for this then, if I'm like concerned about it before it actually starts to happen and there's no way for us to question it?
Well, in all due respect, I don't think you can get an answer about the hours until the people that are actually running the business decide what hours they want to run.
Okay, I'm not just asking about the hours, I'm asking about converting it into a duplex as well.
Okay, your worship, if I could jump in for a second.
Yep, go ahead.
So in terms of hours of operation, it is my understanding that we're dealing with normal business hours. Ultimately, the municipality does not issue business licenses for this type of use, but the municipality also has a noise bylaw. So if there's anything offside in terms of unwarranted noise being generated from this facility, then we've got bylaws that protect the citizens of the municipality. In terms of also your request for information about remodeling the existing house to accommodate 2 dwelling units, that is something that the applicant will have to address through the Ontario Building Code. So it's a case of making a request for the zone change through this approvals process. And if the applicant is successful, then they need to take it to the next level in terms of satisfying what the requirement is under the Ontario Building Code. That would include not only the retrofitting exercise with putting in an additional dwelling unit, but also satisfying sewage disposal matters in terms of the private on-site septic system. Those are all matters that are governed under the building code.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
I feel that I really didn't get any answers to this. I feel like it just automatically is going through, and I'm just concerned as a neighbor, and I'm not quite sure where to go from here.
Okay, well, thank you for your concerns, and we've answered everything we can answer, but there's just some things that's beyond our scope, so.
But should the people who are applying for this, should they not have been at this meeting to answer these questions?
They don't have to. That's, they're.
But then how am I supposed to get answers?
Well, we've answered everything that is possible to answer. That they have no, they don't have to answer hours or anything like that. That's something that's privately done through a business. And
I'm
we
not
don't.
just asking about hours, though. I'm asking about what it's going to look like.
Yeah, and I think that's what our director of planning has answered. So unless you have any additional questions
No.
or comments, okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council members have any comments or questions? Councillor Patterson?
Mayor Work, I'm trying to understand this second dwelling on this property. Maybe I could get a little more information about that particular part of this request.
Your worship, if I could answer the question.
Yep, go ahead.
Simply put, Councillor Patterson, we have a single detached dwelling on the property today, and they're looking at doing a conversion within that dwelling to change it over into a duplex. So you have two separate dwelling units within that house. That's what's being proposed.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to advise that the public meeting portion for this application has been completed and ask council to make their decision on the application by resolution, considering all comments received. Councillor Hunter?
Through your worship, I would move the recommendation of the planner.
Okay, and we have the recommendation attached. And I'm going to advise for a seconder for that motion. Deputy Mayor Elliott?
I'll second it, but maybe if I can just add a comment. I think to maybe provide a little bit of reassurance to the public in the fact that we have property standards bylaws, we have noise bylaws, we have all of these bylaws in place that are not just for this particular business, but for all businesses and all residential properties that are within it. And if there's any point in time where a property is not following the property standards bylaw, is violating the noise bylaws, it's in everyone's right within the municipality to file a complaint with our bylaw enforcement officer. That's why we have these processes in place. And so it would be no different with this. If council does go through this and allow a business, they would fall under the same bylaws and have to follow that. And so they would have to keep a tidy business and they would have to do all of that. And so I would just leave those comments there.
And I think that's the reassurance we have for everyone that's involved. So we have a mover and we have a seconder, and I call the vote. All in favor? Okay, against? Okay, and so carried. And I'm going to advise that a written notice of the decision will be forwarded to designated parties. And there's a 20-day appeal period from the date of decision. You may request to be notified of the decision by emailing the clerk. And now we have the procedure for the public meeting for zoning application Z2921. The purpose of this public meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment as submitted by the Boardwalk at Millbond Partnership and Such Development Limited, the agent being Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, care of J. McGuffin, the property location being the east side of Mill Road and the South Boardwalk Way, Dorchester. So I'm going to ask our planning director to provide an overview of application and planning recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this rezoning application is a request to change the zoning of certain lands to a site-specific residential R2 category withholding to allow for semi-detached dwellings, which are otherwise not permitted under the current zoning. At the same time, Your Worship, the developer is also requesting a red line amendment, a minor red line amendment to phase 3 of the boardwalk at Mill Pond draft plan of subdivision. A red line amendment is an adjustment to lot lines, which is being requested. The zoning bylaw amendment application would implement the requested red line amendment, and the county is being the delegated approval authority for the red line amendment, is seeking direction from the municipality regarding the appropriateness of this proposal. So as I mentioned, the red line amendment would apply to phase 3 of the boardwalk subdivision. And that is to respond to current market demands for specific housing types, including the provision of semi-detached lots along Mill Road, south of Boardwalk Way, and also the accommodation of larger residential lots south of Boardwalk Way for single detached dwellings consistent with lots found in phase 1 and 2 of the boardwalk subdivision. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as noted in my report, and provincial policy, the county official plan, and the Thames Centre official plan, they all require significant development, including subdivisions, to occur within fully serviced settlement areas that demonstrate an efficient use of land and infrastructure, as well as offer a mix of housing types subject to appropriate forms of density. So this proposal, it is located in the urban settlement area of Dorchester. It is to be connected to full municipal services and provides for low density residential uses in the form of semi-detached dwellings along Mill Road. Furthermore, the official plan for Thames Centre also includes criteria used to evaluate zoning bylaw amendments. And as noted in my report, I'm satisfied that that criteria has been addressed, or it is capable of being addressed through the building permit process. The effect of the proposed minor red line amendment would include some slight realignment of lot lines on Street B to provide an even distribution of lot frontages in the order of 15 meters. Also, a reduction of 22 total lots to accommodate wider lots along Harvest Lane and Street B in response to market and builder demand for larger single detached lots. And this would be consistent with what's found in phases 1 and 2, as previously mentioned. Also, Your Worship, the addition of 9 lots through the reduction in lot frontages along Mill Road to accommodate semi-detached units to ultimately provide more housing choice. So in all, with this red line amendment, a reduction of 13 lots is requested. The developer's planning consultant notes that there are several opportunities to offset this reduction. And that would include residential building blocks west of Mill Road. Those have not been established through lot frontages at this time, along with the opportunity to accommodate a mix of housing types with medium density residential units at Harvest Lane and Dorchester Road, along with the addition of new semi-detached lots. So in all, staff is satisfied with the requested rezoning and red line amendment, which are consistent with provincial policy and in conformity with the county and Thames Centre official plans. In the circulation of the application to agencies, the only issue that was identified, Your Worship, was through the chief building official. He notes no concerns. However, the Ontario Building Code does not allow for sharing of services over property lines and does not allow for building over property lines. So as such, the developer should keep that into consideration. In terms of public comments, we did receive 2 submissions. The first from GC Hang. So there's strongly opposed to this rezoning, which will not only significantly alter the character of the neighborhood, but also add to the congestion of housing in an already small plot of land. They're also seeking a copy of council's decision. Also, we did receive a submission, Your Worship, from Kyle Elliott, who noted that the location of semi-detached dwellings could be better suited on the south side of Harvest Lane rather than along Mill Road, with Mill Road taking on more traffic by comparison. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that that Thames Center supports the red line amendment request. And secondly, that the rezoning application be approved in principle, and that I be given direction to provide the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting, once the county has approved the red line amendment request for Boardwalk at Mill Pond. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship, if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. As the agent here, Alan?
Yes, Your Worship. I have Jay McGuffin coming in.
Great. Good evening, Mr. McGuffin.
Hi, good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Thank you very much for having me here this evening.
Do you have any additional information you'd like to provide?
I don't think any additional information. I would just like to thank Mr. Bancroft for his report. He's done an excellent job. We are in full support of the recommendations put forth by Mr. Bancroft and are here and available to respond to any questions of council or members of the public.
Any members of the public, Alan, who have questions?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Any council members have any comments or questions regarding this proposal? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, Mayor Work, when they talk about semi-detached dwellings at 10 meters frontage, what do those look like? What are those? I think we need to know what that is.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Through you, Your Worship, just in response, I'm assuming that question was directed to myself and not to Mr. Bancroft.
I would think so.
Okay. Well, a semi-detached dwelling on the face of it, sir, would simply look like, if you're familiar with what a townhouse looks like, just attached dwellings. So a townhouse would be more than two, so it could be in blocks of 6, whereas a semi-detached is in blocks of 2. They are similar, they're freehold in nature versus cluster. So if you're familiar with a townhouse development that is perhaps rental and on a large block, that would be referred to usually as a cluster townhome. Although there are opportunities for vacant land condo townhomes to be developed. So the tenure doesn't really matter, but in terms of what you're looking at from a built product, it looks very similar to, well, either it looks like a large home, except that it would have 2 front doors and 2 garages, or it would look like a short block of townhomes. 2 ways of describing it.
Okay, any other questions? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, and then how many, is this a 1-story block? Because I mean, we have condominiums in town here already out of Valley View, and the seniors, they prefer that kind of development. I'm just, are these 2 stories? Are they 3 stories? Or
they're able to be 1 or 2 stories. Until building permit, until they're purchased, they won't know exactly what it is. Just like a single detached lot, when you go in and purchase your lot, you could put on a 1-story or a 2-story, depending on what your zoning permits.
Okay, any other questions? No, seeing none. Council, going to advise that the public meeting portion for this application has been completed, and I'm going to ask council to make their decision on the application by resolution, considering all comments received. Deputy Mayor Elliott?
So moved.
Okay, seconder? Councillor Hunter? Call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? So carried. Thank you. I'm going to advise that the written notice of the decision will be forwarded to designated parties, and there's a 20-day appeal period from the date of decision. You may request to be notified of the decision by emailing the clerk. Thank you, Mr. McGuffin.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Now moving on to the public meeting for zoning application Z 3121. Now advise that the purpose of this public meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment as submitted by Stuart Bell and Jennifer Pruder, the property location being 23310 Welborn Road. I'm going to ask the planning director to provide an overview of application and planning recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an application for rezoning to permit a second dwelling unit within a proposed accessory building, which is otherwise not permitted under the current zoning. The subject property, it's a 2.5 acre rural residential lot located on the east side of Welborn Road, south of the hamlet of Welborn. These lands contain a single detached dwelling along with an accessory building in the form of a drive shed. And the lands are used for residential purposes, and they're privately serviced. These lands are designated agricultural, and they're also zoned for agricultural purposes. The applicant is proposing to construct an accessory building in the form of a garage, which is also to contain a dwelling unit. The accessory building is proposed to have a floor area of just under 2,000 square feet in size, whereas the dwelling unit would be comprised of half that size. Current zoning limits the number of dwellings to 1 per lot. Therefore, this request is being sought as an exception. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, and certainly there's policy direction offered at the provincial level in terms of encouraging an appropriate range and mix of housing types, including second units. That direction is also echoed under the County of Middlesex official plan and also through the Thames Centre official plan. Through the Thames Centre official plan, it's the official plan specifically states that there should be regulation concerning limiting the size of second units to ensure that it remains clearly secondary to the primary dwelling unit. And those matters are capable of being addressed through zoning regulations that limit the size of the second unit. Also, Your Worship, my report outlines an analysis in regards to the criteria used to evaluate zoning bylaw amendments. So in all, I'm satisfied that that criteria has been satisfied, or it is capable of being satisfied through the building permit process. It's also important to note that given the proximity of an active railway line just to the rear of the subject property, CN has recommended that mitigation measures be implemented as a condition of development, as noted in the agency section of my report. Staff is satisfied that these mitigation measures are appropriate and can be addressed by having the applicant enter into a development agreement to be registered against the title of the property prior to obtaining the zoning approval. I have shared this information, Your Worship, with the applicant, and the applicant has indicated no concerns with having to satisfy these obligations. Also, based on my analysis, I'm satisfied that this proposal is consistent with provincial policy and in conformity with the county and Thames Centre official plans. So during the agency circulation process, there were 2 issues identified. I briefly talked about CN, and their comments are included in my report. Some mitigation measures that they're looking for include air conditioning, also for window glazing facing the railway, also exterior cladding for facades facing the railway, and also rigid insulation on foundation walls facing the railway. And this is all to mitigate noise impact. The chief building official, he's noted that the applicant will be required to install a new septic system for the dwelling unit and accessory building, or a septic assessment by an engineer to determine if the existing system is sized enough to accommodate both dwelling units. And then lastly, for members of the public, no concerns have been received from the public. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, that the application for rezoning be approved in principle and that I be directed to prepare the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting, once the applicants have entered into a development agreement with the municipality, and that agreement be registered on title. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have the applicant here, Alan?
Yes, Your Worship, we have Stuart Bell.
All right.
There we go. Just get this figured
There
out
we are.
here.
Good evening, Mr. Bell.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. Do you have any additional information you want to provide?
No, I think Mark covered it very well.
Yeah, he's pretty thorough like that, isn't he?
Yeah, I noticed that.
All right. Any members from the public in attendance who have questions, Alan?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Council, any comments or questions regarding this application? Seeing none, then I'm advised that the public meeting portion for this application has been completed, and I'm going to ask council to make their decision on the application by resolution, considering all comments received. Deputy Mayor Elliott?
So moved.
Okay, seconder? Councillor Hunter, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, I'm advised that there's a written, oh, so carried. I should actually add that part. Advised that a written notice of the decision will be forwarded to designated parties, and there's a 20-day appeal period from the date of decision. You may request to be notified of the decision by emailing the clerk. And thank you, Stuart and Jennifer, for joining us tonight. Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, now we have the proposed draft plan of condominium 39T TC, I lost my letter, CDM 2102, and the following is the purpose of this public meeting tonight is to obtain feedback from the public. The Director of Planning and Development will provide subsequent report evaluating the said application with a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. Any written feedback that has been received will be considered by council when making a decision. The County of Middlesex is the approval agency for plans of condominiums, and the municipality conducts a statutory public meeting required by the Planning Act for consideration of this plan of condominium. So the purpose of this meeting is to consider an application as submitted by 269994 Ontario Incorporated, care of Matt and Jenna Cassidy, and the location is 133 Donnybrook Drive. So I'll ask our planning director to provide an overview of the application.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the subject property is located on the south side of Donnybrook Drive and east of Westchester Bourne. This site is vacant, and it has an area of approximately 5.3 hectares, which is to accommodate a proposed industrial condominium. These lands are designated rural industrial under the Thames Center official plan, and they're also zoned rural industrial M2 under our zoning bylaw. So this proposal, as indicated, 6 lots altogether that are proposed to support industrial development. Lots would range in size from about 0.68 hectares. It would be on average of about lots would be on average 0.68 hectares in size, with the exception of the southerly lot being about 1.5 hectares in size. These lots would also be accessible by a private road with a cul-de-sac off Donnybrook Drive, being a shared common element feature of the condominium. Also, these individual lots would be shared by serviced by private individual wells and private individual sewage disposal systems, considering full municipal services are not available in the area. Also, the applicant's contracting / excavating business, which was conveyed as a separate lot, has legal access over the proposed private road through a registered easement. Also, Your Worship, there were a number of studies included in support of this proposal, including a servicing brief, septic design with soils investigation, also an archaeological assessment. In terms of agency comments received, from the County of Middlesex Safety and Standards Officer, he's made a note that this property will need to be assigned a Donnybrook Drive municipal address with each unit assigned a unit number. Also from Bell Canada, they've made a request for standard conditions of development to be included as conditions of draft plan of condominium approval. The same would also hold true with, Enbridge. They've noted that there's a gas easement on the subject property, and a reminder that no permanent structures or foundations can be installed on the easement. From our Director of Public Works, he's noted that Public Works is requesting to be copied on all water well records once completed. The drainage superintendent has noted that drainage reassessments will be required. And our chief building official, he's noted that the private road will need to comply with the Ontario Building Code as a fire department access route and will need a turnaround area to accommodate a fire truck. He's also noted that for each site, they will need to provide water for firefighting by way of water supply tanks or ponds, with a design for each according to Ontario Building Code specifications. The developer will also need to provide soil testing and verify that on-site sewage systems can be accommodated on each site. Lastly, the chief building official also noted that with the new private road, no parking shall be permitted on one side and signage installed to reflect no parking, and that no parking be permitted in the turnaround. This is all to maintain the required fire routes. To date, no responses have been received from the public, Your Worship. So it's my recommendation that my report be received, and secondly, that I provide a subsequent report evaluating this application, taking into account all public and agency comments received, with a recommendation for council's consideration at a future meeting. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here? Alan?
Yes, Your Worship. I have Jenna Cassidy coming in.
Okay, thank you. Oh, we don't have the video. There you are.
Hi there.
Hello, welcome. And would you like to provide any additional information?
No, we don't have any information, just here for any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ellen, are there any members from the public in attendance who have questions?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Any council members have comments or questions regarding this application? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, Mayor Work. In terms of fire and water, is there any? There's no municipal water services there, so there won't be any hydrants. Is that my understanding? Correct?
Your Worship, yes, that is correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments? No. Okay, so then I'm going to advise that the public meeting portion for this application has been completed. There is a recommendation that's attached, council. So I'd like to make a decision regarding that. Councillor Hunter?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to move the recommendation of the planner.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Elliott, all in favor? Okay, against? Okay, noted, and so moved. And then advise when we make a decision at the future meeting that the prescribed information will be submitted to the approval authority, the County of Middlesex. Any person or public body can make written submissions to the approval authority before the approval authority makes its decision under the Planning Act. And now I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the public meeting at, looks like 6:31 p.m. and council reconvene its regular meeting in order to continue with its deliberations. Looking for a mover? Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded. Councillor Patterson, all in favor? Okay, so moved. Now moving on to 9.1, PDS 00522, application for draft plan of subdivision 39T TC 2102, which is 246 North. Incorporated applicant is the Zelinka Priamo Limited Agent for 246 North Street. Right, so I'm going to ask our Director of Planning to go ahead and begin.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a bit of background, the subject property, it's a 4.8 acre parcel of land located on the east side of North Street and north of Minnie Street, backing onto the Village Gate subdivision in Dorchester. These lands are designated residential under the official plan and are also zoned for residential purposes. It's an R1-H holding category. The lands are also regulated under the Conservation Authorities Act. So this, with this proposal, a request is being made to develop residential lots to support single detached dwellings, 13 lots altogether. Ranging in lot frontages from 23 meters to 30 meters and lot areas from 975 square meters to 1,250 square meters. So the imperial equivalent for lot sizes being a quarter of an acre to a third of an acre in size. Village Gate Drive is proposed to be extended west to accommodate with North Street. And a new road with a cul-de-sac is proposed to run north-south and connect to the new Village Gate Drive extension. Also, these lands are to be serviced by municipal water as well as sanitary and storm sewers. So in terms of agency comments received to date, in terms of issues that have been identified from the county emergency services, they've indicated that proposed street names need to be submitted to the county for approval. They also go on with their comments to provide some pretty specific technical matters in terms of addressing, also the erection of necessary street signage, when those street signs need to be installed, and matters governing municipal 911 addressing. For other issues identified, the chief building official, he's noted that a grading plan designed for the subdivision, that be registered on title to ensure no grading issues between the existing development and properties adjacent thereto. He also makes note that demolition permits will be required. And foundations fully removed for the existing barns on the property. Our Director of Public Works, he's noted that the cul-de-sac radius needs to be increased from 12 meters to 20 meters as per Thames Center engineering design standards. And from the drainage superintendent, he's noted that a sufficient stormwater outlet be required in order to properly service this development. In terms of concerns raised by the public, Your Worship, those are noted key areas of concern under item 3.2 in my report. Also, the minutes of the meeting are included in my report. So I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as noted under section 4 of the report. And according to the Planning Act, decisions made by planning authorities, including by municipal councils, shall be consistent with the provincial policy statement. The PPS states that settlement areas shall be the focus of growth and development. And Dorchester is a designated settlement area under both the county and Thames Center official plans. Provincial policy also states that municipal water and sanitary sewers are the preferred form of servicing for settlement areas. And this property is, of course, situated in Dorchester, where full municipal services are proposed to accommodate this development. At the same time, however, Your Worship, provincial policy also indicates that efficient development and land use patterns which sustain the financial well-being of the province and municipality over the long term are encouraged. The proposed subdivision does not reflect an efficient development and land use pattern, in my opinion, considering it would yield 6.7 units per hectare. This translates, Your Worship, into the lowest unit yield by a significant margin compared to existing subdivision applications and subdivision concepts yielding at least 10.3 units per hectare. Provincial policy also states that new development taking place must demonstrate an efficient use of land, infrastructure, and public service facilities. Again, this proposal does not allow for the efficient use of land and infrastructure, considering the proposed plan includes lots of having frontages of 30 meters and a quarter of an acre in size. Despite being developed under a different planning regime, Your Worship, I just wanted to compare this proposal to the adjacent Village Gate subdivision lots by comparison, which are not on full municipal services, yet they yield on average smaller lot frontages of 20 meters and lot areas of 0.2 acres in size compared to what's being proposed with this subject development. Also, Your Worship, consideration must be dealt with in terms of Section 51, sub 24 of the Planning Act, including having regard for matters of provincial interest, including provincial policy statement, conformity with any official plan having jurisdiction, the suitability of land for the purposes for which the land is to be subdivided, and the dimensions and shapes of the proposed lots. So for the reasons previously identified, this proposal does not meet that criteria, in my opinion. And as such, this proposal is not consistent with provincial policy and not in conformity with the County of Middlesex official plan and the Thames Center official plan. So as noted in my report, Your Worship, it is staff's recommendation that council for the municipality of Thames Center recommends that the County of Middlesex deny this application for a draft plan of subdivision. Again, considering it's not consistent with the provincial policy statement and does not conform with the County of Middlesex official plan and the Thames Center official plan. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Before, any questions for our planning director before we move on to a delegation? Okay, so we have a delegation tonight, and that's Ben McCauley from Zelenka Preamble. So welcome, Ben. Whenever you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great, excellent. Again, my name is Ben McCauley, Senior Planner with Zelenka Preamble Limited, and I'm representing the applicant 246 North Incorporated. I've had the opportunity to review staff's report regarding the application for draft plan of subdivision on this property, and I wanted to discuss a few matters for council's consideration before a final decision is rendered. Firstly, I disagree with staff's interpretation and application of the provincial policy statement, the county's official plan, and the municipal's official plan as it relates to this proposal. My conclusion when we made our application was that this proposed development did in fact reflect an efficient development and land use pattern. I can appreciate that other existing subdivision applications and concepts that may have been submitted to the municipality may propose densities closer to 10.3 units per hectare. However, without any context on the location and existing surrounding property fabric to which where those applications were located, it's challenging as a planner to comment on that as it relates back to our application. However, based on my analysis, the proposed density of 6.7 units per hectare is actually slightly larger than the density of the existing block in which 246 North Street is located, specifically within the boundary of the northerly and easterly extent of Village Gate Drive, North Street to the west, and Mini Street to the south. This existing block is approximately 15.5 hectares in size. And based on my counts, there is approximately 82 dwellings within that area, translating to a density of just 5.3 units per hectare. In some instances, lots within this block have lot areas in excess of 4,000 square meters and frontages greater than 30 meters rather, whereas the average lot area and lot frontage of the proposed 13 lots in this application are both below those maximums. With all that said, the proposed size of the lots are both appropriate and compatible with the surrounding lot fabric in the entire block, and we're proposing a density that is generally consistent with the neighborhood. I can also appreciate that some of the lots in the surrounding area may have been sized accordingly with the services that were available to them at that time, but we are looking at this through a compatibility lens to ensure that the lot fabric is consistent with what exists today. And this is also consistent with preliminary conversations and feedback from the community. From my understanding, the community does not want to see more density than what is being proposed now. And these lots are consistent with the unique sense of place that does exist north of the river in Dorchester, which allows these residents to enjoy the rural characteristics and greater amounts of space provided in the area as compared to what may be the case south of the river. In addition, we are proposing to extend Village Gate Drive to North Street through this application, which I understand is something that would be desired by the community, and our client is looking forward to being able to do that. So all in all, these are our points why the proposed application should be recommended for approval, or at minimum deferred to allow us to have a more meaningful discussion with staff and ultimately advance a decision to the county rather for further consideration. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Just maybe I have a question for our planning director. When Mr. McCauley's talking about deferral, how does that differ from what your recommendation is? Like at any time when we turn this application down, it can come back in front of you, or how does, what's the difference?
Well, I guess with the deferral, it basically means that no decision has been rendered. It could lend itself to adjustments, modifications that the applicant makes to their draft plan of subdivision request. I'm not sure how a deferral would satisfy my concerns, considering I think the issue is that these lands are being developed through a plan of subdivision application, Your Worship, where it's a requirement for a 20-meter right-of-way, in that these lands are better suited to be developed through a reduced private right-of-way through a plan of condominium, where there's too much land that is being eaten up by the 20-meter wide municipal road allowance. So I think the proper route to go by, and this is consistent with my position when we had a pre-consultation meeting way back when to discuss the merits of this proposal, where I shared these concerns and I mentioned that these lands are better suited from a land use efficiency standpoint and also infrastructure standpoint to have them developed by plan of condominium rather than by plan of subdivision. So to answer your question, Your Worship, with a deferral, it would give the applicant an opportunity to modify their proposal. But again, I don't see how a deferral would address my concerns, because again, draft plan of condominium is the proper route to go by in developing these lands, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments for either Mr. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Warwick. I grew up on Eva Street and I spent my entire childhood there. And actually, that was our playground where this property is actually located. And it's all swamp water, and there's a high water table there. So what are we going to do about the water that's there? Because I know on Village Gate, like their basements flood a lot, and it's been an ongoing issue. So how are we going to mitigate that?
Through your worship, is that question for me?
I'm not sure. I guess it's whoever wants to answer it, really.
Your worship, I can provide a response. At the end of the day, dealing with a high water table is something that would have to be engineered. It's my understanding that as part of this proposal that some work has been done from a hydrogeological standpoint. Sorry, I stand corrected, a geotechnical standpoint, dealing with soil content and that sort of thing. At the end of the day, the development of the site will have to be engineered to mitigate those types of impacts, not only in terms of the surrounding properties, but also the built form on those lands. I guess the short answer to the question is it will have to be engineered appropriately, ultimately.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Patterson?
And these 20 lots that they're proposing to put in, how do we service those lots? Like, how do we do that?
Your worship, through you, it's actually 13 lots that is being proposed, not 20 lots. And those 13 lots are to be serviced by full municipal services. So municipal water and sanitary sewers.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Councillor Patterson, any follow-up? Okay, all right. So
Not at this time. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Elliott, go ahead.
Yes, through your worship. Just a comment, not necessarily a question, but I do agree with the direction that our director of planning is coming from. When we look at the way things are moving, we just did an application where the request was for semi-detached houses instead of large lots with single family homes. And when we look at the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, who is coming to us saying that we need more density, we need to put more houses on less land because that's how we're going to protect our agricultural land and how we're going to solve the housing issues that we have. I support what our director of planning says, that these lots are significantly larger, and they're larger than what they back up onto on Village Gate. And I think moving forward, we have to look at that density piece of it and how we protect our agricultural land and build more housing and solve all of these crises that we have in front of us. It's a very fine line. So moving forward, I will be supporting the recommendation from the planner.
We have a mover. Have a seconder? Councillor Hunter, any comments or questions before I call the vote? Councillor Patterson.
I just wanted to make the comment that this land that they're proposing to build these 13 lots on is not agricultural.
Okay, and so all in favor? All in favor? Yep. Okay, and against? Okay, and so carried. And moving on to, thank you, Mr. McCauley. I'm moving on to PDS 00922, applications for a draft plan of subdivision 39T TC 2101, the official plan 0421 and zoning bylaw amendment for Z721, which is the Penick Thorndale Land Corporation is the applicant for 17177 Thorndale Road. And Mr. Bancroft, I believe you have a report.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So my report provides an evaluation of the subject applications to facilitate the development of a residential plan of subdivision. It includes a summary of the consultation process, both public and agency, along with a recommendation for council's consideration. And council will recall that this proposal was originally presented at the June 28th, 2021 public meeting of Municipal Council. The subject property, it is a 44-acre parcel of land located on the south side of Thorndale Road at the east end of Meadowbrook Lane and east of the Monteith subdivision in Thorndale. So these lands, they currently contain 3 farm buildings. They're used for agricultural purposes in the form of field crop cultivation. And while these lands are not currently serviced, full municipal services are available in the area. The southern portion of the site is traversed by the Elliott Drain with approximately 20 acres of land, which is proposed to remain undeveloped. These lands are designated residential under the official plan, and they're also zoned for residential purposes R1-H holding, along with environmental protection, EP, and open space zoning. The subject lands are also affected by a wellhead protection area associated with the Village of Thorndale's potable water supply, their well fields, and as such is also subject to policies relevant to the source protection plan. In terms of the proposal, Your Worship, the latest version of the proposal calls for 102 lots to support single detached dwellings, 6 blocks to support semi-detached dwellings, 3 blocks to support medium density residential uses in the form of 1- and 2-story street townhouse dwellings, 2 blocks for stormwater management purposes, 2 blocks for future road connections. That would be lands to the east. If and when the village expands, it would allow for extension of the road network and connectivity of an adjacent subdivision. And also 5 new public streets, including an extension of Meadowbrook Lane from the adjacent Monteith subdivision and a street connection to Thorndale Road. To allow medium density residential uses in the form of those townhouse dwellings, the applicant has also applied for an official plan amendment. And we also have a zoning bylaw amendment applied for to support 3 residential zones. 1 R1 special category for the single detached lots, another R2 special category to accommodate the semi-detached dwellings, and an R3 special category to accommodate the townhouse dwellings that are proposed. There's also open space zoning that would apply to the remaining undeveloped areas. In terms of agency comments received, Your Worship, from the county engineer, he has noted typical county requirements for the plan of subdivision, including the need for land dedication for widening purposes, 18 meters from the center line of construction of County Road 28, which is Thorndale Road. Also, the dedication of a 1-foot reserve along across the semi-detached residential block to prevent direct access to the county road. Also, a requirement for the developer to install left and right turn lanes at the intersection of Thorndale Road and Street D. Also, a requirement for the county to be a reviewing agency for the grading and stormwater management plans for the property. And also a requirement for the purposes of emergency services access, at least 2 access points must be provided for the subdivision, including through connections to the county road and the existing street network through Meadowbrook Lane. Also, in terms of agency circulation comments, Your Worship, the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, they are prepared to recommend draft plan approval, subject to conditions. One condition requiring a final stormwater management plan, another condition requiring a final environmental impact study, and also the need for Section 28 permits under the Conservation Authorities Act prior to any development or site alteration within a regulated area. Also, in terms of comments identified from Enbridge, they're requesting a standard condition regarding that the developer grant any necessary easements. In terms of public concerns, there are a number of written submissions received that are appended to my report. Also, there's an attached list of names which was provided in the form of an informal petition, considering it doesn't contain any original signatures. Also, Your Worship, key areas of concern to note include compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood and that only single detached dwellings should be allowed. Also, Meadowbrook Lane will become a through street with increased traffic, speed and noise, less safe for kids and families. It should remain a cul-de-sac. Also, smaller homes on smaller lots will decrease property values on Meadowbrook Lane, which offers large homes on large lots. Another concern about does Thorndale have sanitary servicing capacity to support other subdivisions on the go, including Rosewood, Y Creek, and Foxborough and Elliott Estates, and now this development. Also, how's the school board going to accommodate this additional growth? Concerns about development within a wellhead protection area. The summary of the public meeting minutes, those are included in my report, Your Worship, under section 4.2. Moving right along. Under my analysis, there's certainly policy direction under the provincial policy statement in allowing this form of development. It also speaks to efficient development and land use patterns. And that's truly a reflection of this development, considering the yield in density would be 14.2 units per hectare. And that would be certainly, it would match on average our uptake of about 10.3 units per hectare. So that's good to see. By comparison, although the Monteith subdivision was developed under a different planning regime on individual private sewage disposal systems, by comparison, that development has a density of 5 units per hectare, which would not demonstrate an efficient use of land and infrastructure based on today's standards. Sorry, Your Worship. I'm trying to be brief with my report. I know there's a lot of information here, but I'm trying to touch on the more salient points. It's important to note under the Thames Centre official plan that one of the reoccurring themes throughout the document calls for a mix of housing types to cater to all stages of life. And more specifically, the plan encourages housing types that are suitable for different age groups, lifestyles, and household structures of existing and future residents. So this proposal would certainly follow that direction by offering housing options in the form of single, semis, and townhouse dwellings. More housing choices to which this development demonstrates means fostering a more sustainable community and encourages existing residents to stay in the area. Dealing with our wellhead protection area, it's important to note that most of this subdivision falls under a vulnerability score of 6 or less under the source water protection plan. Whereas the portion near Thorndale Road registers a score of 10 within 100 meters of the well. It's important to note, Your Worship, that residential uses are considered to be low risk and generally do not normally pose a threat to drinking water systems. So with that being said, the wellhead protection area policies and regulations do not prohibit residential development opportunities. Before this development is able to proceed with that area affected by that high vulnerability score, clearance is required from the municipality's risk management officer, which will be required. There were also concerns, Your Worship, by existing residents about incompatibility of this subdivision compared to the existing Monteith subdivision. Aligned with this concern, one of the goals of the Thames Centre official plan is to ensure that new development is compatible with existing land uses. And compatibility means that planned and existing land uses are able to exist with no unacceptable adverse impacts. So the interface of this proposed subdivision with the existing Monteith subdivision demonstrates compatibility and includes rear yard to rear yard lot with low density residential uses in the form of single detached dwellings. Also, regarding the interface with the existing Monteith subdivision along Meadowbrook Lane, the orientation of lots 43 and 44 have been reconfigured so that they no longer back onto the side yard of 32 Meadowbrook Lane. This reconfiguration ensures that the rhythm of homes facing the street is maintained where the new subdivision and proposed subdivision meet. There were also concerns from neighbors about West Missouri Public School, whether it's capable of accommodating this additional growth. Municipalities are mandated by the Planning Act to circulate school boards on subdivision proposals to ensure that they can generate future enrollment projections and plan ultimately for future schools. Considering the significant growth pressures that we are facing in the municipality, planning staff have established a new framework with the Thames Valley District School Board, where growth data can be shared on a more frequent basis, so that they can, so that the school board can ultimately be better prepared to make the decisions that they need to make from a school planning standpoint. So just as an example, staff met with the school board as recently as last week, and we plan to meet on a quarterly basis to keep everyone informed moving forward. Also, another concern about whether or not there's sufficient servicing capacity to service this development, and the Director of Public Works has confirmed that there's no capacity concerns to deal with. And dealing with the official plan amendment that's been requested, that has been evaluated under section 5.1 of my report, Your Worship, in that following the evaluation criteria under section 7.20 of the official plan, I'm satisfied that that criteria has been met, and that's all laid out in my report. The same would hold true with zoning bylaw amendments. Under section 5.2 of my report, it makes reference to the evaluation criteria, and I'm satisfied that that criteria has been met. In terms of other matters, in conclusion, for parkland dedication, the amount that's required to be dedicated is 5% of the total draft plan area. And through official plan policy direction, the municipality reserves the right to not require the acceptance of constrained lands. So that's either flood-prone lands or lands that contain a woodlot, for example. And considering the developers proposing to dedicate 6.6 hectares of land, which is flood-prone, wooded, and unconstrained, staff is satisfied that this land would be adequate in addressing the parkland dedication requirement, considering 5% of the total draft plan area is 0.521 of a hectare. Also noted in my report, this future parkland, it is not accessible without a footbridge or crossing over the Elliott Drain, and hence it would be appropriate for the municipality and the developer to cost share this project, estimated at $250,000. This cost is a reflection of the crossing width and the need to accommodate equipment to maintain that land over the other side of the drain. The developer has agreed to that, which includes the caveat that the municipality's portion would be subject to an upset limit of $175,000. And if agreed to by council, the municipality's portion could be included as part of the 2023 budget and could be financed through existing cash in lieu of parkland monies, which can be used for parkland related capital expenditures. Lastly, there is one issue that, actually, let me take a step back for a second, Your Worship. Based on the information that I've provided thus far, the developer has no concerns with staff's position. However, the developer does have concerns with staff's recommendation regarding the treatment of block 105 on the draft plan, which is a remnant parcel of land adjacent to street E and D. And as requested by the developer, it's meant to prevent access to those streets from the adjacent residential properties that front onto Thorndale Road, known municipally as 17185, 17197, and 17207 Thorndale Road. So all of those addresses, Your Worship, they back onto this subdivision and are adjacent to Street E. So as noted by the developer, when roads are built by a developer is trying to create trying to avoid the creation of single loaded roads, and that it costs the same amount of money to build a road regardless of whether or not there are lots fronting both sides or one side of the road. Street E is a single loaded road, and the developer's concern is that with a single loaded road, they are only able to recover half the revenue. And also, as noted by the developer, it's not fair to require the installation of services which can be used to service those 3 residential lots should they develop in the future with no possible compensation. So the developer is asking that should block 105 be transferred to the municipality, that the developer is requesting that the municipality pay the developer for half the value of the adjacent road and related services, and that the municipality could recover those costs if and when the residential lots fronting Thorndale Road redevelop. So I'm concerned, Your Worship, with that approach. The residential lots fronting Thorndale Road could be redeveloped from the front, and they could be developed from the front if and when sanitary and storm sewers are extended along Thorndale Road. In other words, they wouldn't be contingent on having that access to the street that is being installed and constructed by the developer. Also, in my experience, we also faced a similar situation with the Trails at White Creek subdivision, where there was a single loaded stretch of road where the developer was seeking compensation from the developer at the time of an oversized residential lot, which was to be subdivided into 4 parcels. And to make a long story short, the consideration of that development at Trails of White Creek was deferred until such time that assumption of the subdivision happened. The point being, the developer was never compensated for that third party from tying into that infrastructure that was provided for the developer of the Trails at White Creek subdivision. So with that being the case, I want to be consistent in that block 105, this stretch of land, that it be conveyed to the municipality and that the developer be offered no financial compensation. Also, Your Worship, all comments received have been considered and have been generally addressed or can be appropriately addressed as conditions of draft plan approval. Those recommended conditions of draft plan approval are attached to my report for council's consideration. So based on the foregoing, I'm satisfied that this proposal is consistent with provincial policy and conforms to the county official plan and the Thames Centre official plan. So as noted in my report, Your Worship, it's my recommendation that number one, that Middlesex Center recommends the issuance of draft plan approval to the County of Middlesex in accordance with the conditions that are attached to my report. Secondly, that the official plan amendment be adopted in principle, and that I be given direction to forward the implementing amendment at the next regular meeting of council for consideration of adoption, which is to be forwarded subsequently to the County of Middlesex for consideration for approval. And then lastly, in dealing with the rezoning, that it be approved in principle, and that upon the granting of draft plan approval and the approval of the official plan amendment by Middlesex County, that I be given direction to forward the implementing zoning bylaw amendment to Thames Center Council for consideration of approval. That is my submission for this proposal, Your Worship. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And that was a very fulsome report and a great shortening of it, knowing that it was 21 pages and took a lot of effort and work to talk to everybody's concerns and bring situations forward that are good for everybody. Council Deputy Mayor Elliott, do you have a question?
Thank you, and Your Worship. The example you gave regarding single-loaded roads, an example of it was in the Y Creek subdivision. But correct me if I'm wrong, there is numerous occasions within the Rosewood subdivision as well in Thorndale where there are single-loaded roads that back onto parkland, the storm management pond, and because they back onto interior roads, that's considered single loaded. At any point in time, was there any compensation from the municipality to Siftons for those single loaded roads?
Through Your Worship, no, there was no compensation offered by the municipality in that respect.
Any other questions? Okay, so I believe we do have a delegation, and for the delegation is Craig Linton from Pemic Thorndale Land Corporation. Is he here with us, Alan?
Yes, Your Worship. One moment.
Welcome, Mr. Linton. Just have to unmute yourself. Yep, there you go. Delegations go so much better when we don't have to use sign language through them. And anyway, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to council and staff, I just wanted to speak very briefly on this issue of Block 105. The big difference that I see between our situation and the issue of Trails of Y Creek, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this would be for number 3, 7, 11, and 15 Elliott Trail, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the roadway that was created being Elliott Trail, there was no strip of land in between that and the larger residential lot that was owned by a different landowner. Am I correct in that?
Looking to you,
Yeah.
Director of Planning.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, Mr. Linton, that is correct. There was no strip of land separating the frontage of that property. Correct. That's right.
Okay, thank you. So really what we have here is just a situation where we have a thin sliver of land that is effectively a remnant parcel between existing 3 residential properties and the road and the future road which we will be constructing. So that's the key issue here, is that we actually own the land. And for the municipality of Thames Centre to simply ask for that land with no compensation is expropriation without compensation. I'm not sure at this point in time if that's actually permitted under the Planning Act. It may very well be, but I've had very little time to try to investigate that possibility. Taking land for nothing is not fair, I will say. I know there was the Rosewood subdivision was brought forward. We have single loaded streets that go in front of future stormwater management pond, but we're not seeking compensation for that in any way, shape, or form, because that stormwater management pond can't be redeveloped in the future. So respectfully, I think that there is a way around this. Number one, you could simply let us keep the land that we intend to own at no cost to the municipality whatsoever. And at some point in time in the future, there could be a private cost sharing agreement between us and the future landowners that doesn't involve Thames Centre at all. Or secondly, if you do really want that land, all that we would request is that there be a development agreement signed between Thames Centre and PEMIC that simply states that Thames Centre will then try to recover from any future development that accesses that street and the services, attempt to recover something that reasonably approximates half of the construction cost of the road to the municipality's best effort. And we could put a time limit on it as well, something like 20 or 25 years. We enter into these agreements not infrequently. I've done so with Sifton in the past, in London just now. We have a front-ending agreement in St. Mary's with the municipality that's very much a similar scenario here, whereby St. Mary's front-ended the construction of a water main through lands that we control. And as we develop along that frontage, we will pay back to the municipality the cost of that water main. So this isn't something that is uncommon, and I respectfully request that expropriation without compensation not be considered. Otherwise, thank you for the report, Mark, and I appreciate everything else. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions or comments regarding Mr. Linton's presentation? No. Oh, Kelly, sorry.
Yes, through your worship, I would side with Mr. Linton in the fact that, to be frank, I don't really understand why Thames Centre needs this sliver of land. I think I would be in favor of removing the recommendation that Thames Centre takes assumption of this land at no cost and the land remains with PEMIC. I don't believe Thames Centre needs to get involved. And if down the road, PEMIC or Ms. Linton wants to go in an agreement with the three property owners along the front, whether that's, it's unfortunate that those lots are odd sizes and don't fit up nicely. If there's some way they want to sever and make the lots nicer, or whether those individuals want to connect into services through that land, that would be up to Mr. Linton and PEMIC to make that agreement with those landowners. But I don't see any need for Thames Centre to be involved in that. And so, moving forward, if anyone else wants to discuss it, but I would make a motion to approve this, but with the removal of condition 14 being that this block 105 is given to Thames Centre at no cost.
Okay. Any other comments regarding that? Councillor Hunter.
Through you, Your Worship, I would echo the comments of the Deputy Mayor that I don't really see any reason why Thames Centre needs to be involved in that piece of property whatsoever.
All right, any other comments? So if I understand what you're seeing, Deputy Rowlett, you want to approve the condition with the exception of number 14?
Yes, so I would maybe just defer to Mr. Bancroft to make sure I do this correctly, and with our deputy clerk as well. But I would move that, sorry, I'm just scrolling through these 21 pages. So I would move the motion. However, the first one would be, instead of saying and subject to the conditions attached in report number PDS 00922, it would include that the conditions attached be amended to remove condition 14 and be renumbered.
Okay, did the clerk Get that? Okay. All right. So you're moving. I have a seconder. Councillor Hunter. Okay. Any other comments or questions before I call the vote? Oh, all right. So all in favor? Opposed? Okay. So carried. Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Moving on to PDS 00422, application for zoning bylaw amendment Z 2221, Thames Center Acres Incorporated, care of Mal Jensen's, applicant being Zelenka Priamo Limited, the agent, and the address being 4540 Breen Road, and looking for our Director of Planning to discuss this one.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, I'm just trying to quickly go through the agenda. Here we go.
Page 20 yet?
I'm there. Thank you. So this is an application for zoning bylaw amendment that has come back to council. So this is a request to rezone a 1 hectare portion of the subject lands to permit a truck terminal for the parking of trucks. Council will recall that this application was originally heard at the November 22nd, 2021 public meeting, with the application deferred until additional information regarding the nature of the proposed use could be provided to the satisfaction of yours truly, and that a subsequent report be prepared for council's consideration. So based on the information provided, I'm satisfied that this application can now be considered. And so just to recap, the subject property, it's a 150-acre farm located on the north side of Breen Road and on the west side of 5 Points Road, southeast of Putnam. These lands are also designated for agricultural purposes and for the most part are zoned for farming purposes. So the applicant was seeking this approval to develop this truck terminal on a portion of the farm that currently contains a graveled yard area and storage buildings. And council will recall, as noted on page 2 of my report, there's an existing A-3 zoning envelope that is placed in the wrong spot. It was meant to, in my opinion, to incorporate the gravel area and some of those existing buildings. So as part of this rezoning application, it is meant to correct the position of that zoning envelope. And council will recall that this proposal, or sorry, that this property has been subject to at least 2 temporary use rezoning approvals dealing with truck terminals going back to 2005 and also more recently in 2012. So with that being said, Your Worship, I've conducted my analysis and I'm satisfied that this proposal can be recognized as being an on-farm diversified use, considering it would meet all of the criteria as noted under OMAFRA's guidelines on permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural areas. So yeah, I'm satisfied that all of that criteria has been met. There's one particular criteria dealing with limiting this type of use in terms of its area, and on-farm diversified uses, or OFDUs as they're called short form, they be limited to 2% of the area of the farm, not to exceed 1 hectare. And the limits of the zoning bylaw are intended to be precisely delineated through a reference plan to be undertaken by a surveyor. And those particulars are meant to be included within a zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration. So the applicant has no concerns with that approach. And also under the Thames Center official plan, it includes criteria used to evaluate zoning bylaw amendments. And I'm satisfied that that criteria has been met, or it's capable of being met through imposing appropriate zoning regulations. In particular, to ensure that this trucking operation remains small in scale, to limit impact on Breen Road. The applicant's agent has no concerns over restricting the number of trucks to a maximum of 6. So the idea, Your Worship, is to plug in that restrictor within the zoning of the site. In terms of agency comments to note of, the county engineer, he's indicated a concern about ongoing development that would increase the amount of traffic, especially trucks and other large vehicles using Putnam Road and Breen Road intersection due to the proximity of the railway crossing to Putnam Road. All future development should be required to contribute to intersection improvements as determined by the municipality and the county. So that's the county's position in dealing with this matter. Our chief building official, he makes note that change of use permits should be required for any of those buildings that are undertaking a change in use. And also our director of public works, he's noted that based on the recent information provided by the applicant, restricting the number of trucks, he has no comments or concerns with this application. So it is my recommendation, Your Worship, as noted in my report, that this rezoning application be approved in principle, subject to restricting the area of the A-3 zoning envelope to a maximum of 1 hectares, shifting the location of the A-3 zoning envelope to its proper location, and limiting the size of the operation to keep it small scale to a maximum of 6 trucks. And that I be given direction to forward the necessary zoning bylaw amendment limited to first and second reading for the next regular meeting. And that third and final reading occur once a reference plan description has been provided to legally describe the lands affected to the satisfaction of myself. So I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any questions regarding this application? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any comments or questions? No? Okay, all in favor? And so moved. Okay, moving on to 9.4, declaring and disposing of surplus lands to the Thames Valley District School Board, River Heights Public School property. And there is a report regarding this, and go ahead, Director of Planning.
Thank you, Your Worship. So you have before you report number PDS-010-22. It's pretty straightforward in terms of providing background information regarding an expansion to the River Heights Public School, which would require the acquisition of lands currently owned by the municipality. I'm going to be brief here. As we all know, the school board plans to expand River Heights through the construction of a new freestanding building that it would accommodate a family and childcare center. And the building would be situated in the southeast area of the site. Site improvements would also include a new parking lot adjacent to the new building, as well as a new pickup and drop-off lane to assist with on-site traffic at the start and end of the school day. So as shown on the attached map, the new pickup drop-off lane would, however, require the acquisition of lands owned by the municipality, given space restrictions to accommodate this feature on the current school property. Those lands which are proposed to be acquired are currently part of the Dorchester Park in the form of an existing laneway, which provides access to the municipality's recreational facilities, such as the pool, splash pad, and playground. That parcel to be acquired would have a frontage of 30 meters and an area of just under half an acre. So in exchange for the acquisition of these lands, the school board has agreed to accommodate Thames Center resident parking through the expansion of their parking area, which would include barrier-free access to our recreational facilities through existing and proposed walkways. And just a few comments to close off with, Your Worship. Through the required site plan agreement, staff intends to include a provision regarding the sharing of the parking area with Thames Center residents to access the recreational facilities. And should council agree to this arrangement, there's no doubt that there's going to need to be an educational component or a learning curve, in that staff is going to need to be proactive to inform the public of the change in parking through the use of our website and through our social media channels, particularly in advance of summer months, once this work is undertaken. So the remainder of the laneway lands would be retained by the municipality and potentially converted to landscape open space as additional parking. In terms of financial implications, although the sale of these lands would not include financial compensation to the municipality, it would be a cost-saving measure, since it would eliminate the need for the municipality to construct a parking area compared to the existing informal arrangement where residents simply park on either side of the laneway leading to the park or in the school parking lot. I did mention in my report that legal fees have been incurred in reviewing the draft agreement of purchase and sale. I stand corrected. Under the draft agreement of purchase and sale, the school board is actually responsible to cover our legal fees. So I have nothing further to add, Your Worship, unless there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, you know, this is a good news story. It's definitely something that's going to be safer for not only the students and the parents that are dropping off, but also for anybody who's at the municipal office during those crucial times. It does get a bit hectic, people zooming in and out. So this is going to be a good thing. And anything that moves ahead towards our early years center is a very positive thing. Council, any questions or comments regarding that? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, Mayor Work. Can the director expand on how the access to our pool and splash pad is going to be? I know you talked about a shared parking agreement. I just don't quite understand how that would work.
Do you know, Henry, are you on the screen for the answer to that?
I can. I apologize. Okay, I can answer your worship, and I will. The parking lot, because the new facility attached to River Heights is so far to the south, the parking lot is going to actually extend further right up to the edge of our park. So people coming into the school, or what they would use our driveway, and I use driveway loosely, it's just part of the park. They would travel down further to the furthest point of the south of the parking lot, be able to park. There is going to be an accessible ramp. There is going to be a set of steps that take you up to the park trail. You can go to the splash pad. You can go to the pool from there. As council will recall, we noted this on our facility tour prior to budget, and we stood in the area. We kind of showed everybody where the parking lot would extend to, and then the benefits that would come to us being able to expand on our own municipal parking lot for our own office as we expand with staff as we move forward with supporting all the growth that we're going to see. Again, as council will note, the parking lot here had a budget that was attached to it that was approved. And part of that approval was to see some EV stations put in our own parking lot, not only for our staff, but our municipal fleet as they move forward in that affordable direction.
Okay, any additions to that from our Director of Planning, or does that pretty well cover it?
No, I have nothing further to add, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Patterson, any other comments?
Nothing at this time, Mayor Work. I just wanted to make sure that the community knew that they still had access to parking and be able to walk to our pool and our splash pad and that part of the recreation that we have.
And CEO Henry,
Yeah, through your worship, that I think Director Bancroft covered that off. We're going to do everything we can to educate the public and assist them with the process. When the facility is completed, there'll be a nice new parking lot to park in, and we'll use all of the methods as the director pointed out in his report and in his presentation to make sure that happens.
okay, so now I'm just looking at this recommended motion and I'd like to know councillors' wishes. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Elliott.
So moved.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Hunter, all in favor?
Just one more question, Mayor Work.
Yep, go ahead.
I understand that we're selling this land for, I'm assuming $1 or $2. Are we so sure that that's the best way to go with this? I just question that because it's valuable land.
Think we're pretty sure. I think that has been something that's been discussed over and over again, and it's integral part of the early years building coming in. And if Director or if CEO Henry wants to add anything to that comment, now's the time.
Thank you, Your Worship. The land right now is not used by us in any circumstance. It comes in, it goes out. It is not large enough to be a parcel, if you will. It really doesn't have any value other than to the school who uses it 99% of the time. I think I should go back and remind council that there was a $500,000 contribution to tap into our sanitary system as made by the Thames Valley District School Board. And again, as noted earlier in this meeting, there has been leaps and bounds made with this group in order to keep this project moving. This has been 2.5 years in the making, if not longer. And coming to the table has been at the start of this a little bit treacherous, if you will, but we've smoothed over all of those relationships. We're moving along at a great pace. And yes, I would stand behind the fact that this is the best method moving forward to accommodate the school, to accommodate the public, and accommodate the traffic for a safety flow around the school, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. And Deputy Mayor Elliott.
Yes, Your Worship. I'd just like to add as well, when you speak to many parents with kids that attend River Heights, drop off and pick up and drop off is a huge safety concern, in the fact that there really is hardly any room within the configures of River Heights. They do use that yes, especially with school buses that come in and out, the parents going in and out, kids trying to cross across all of those lanes of traffic. The fact, and CAO Henry alluded to, is that the school already uses that laneway 99.9% of the time. So by allowing them to have this land, it allows them to properly develop. So there is safer pickup and drop off for the kids going. And the fact that it doesn't actually impact the people being able to park and get to the school. I commend staff with working so well with Thames Valley District School Board to come up with these agreements to ensure that everything is looked at, is met. This was discussed thoroughly throughout the budget with the redevelopment of our parking lots. We discussed this on our tour, so this isn't something new coming to council. So again, it is beneficial to Thames Center. It's beneficial to the school, most importantly for safety for the kids. And again, commend staff for working and putting together this.
Okay, Councillor Patterson. You're muted, Councillor Patterson. You're still muted.
Oh, there we go.
Yep, we're good now.
Okay. Just one more question, Mayor Work. So just so I'm clear, we're selling land that's just the laneway. We're not selling actual, like, in the park grass, like where the soccer field is or anything like that.
Well, okay, I'm going to let CEO Henry answer that, but I think there is a diagram that shows exactly what is being sold.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. There is a diagram exactly in the report that outlines the plot of land that is going, and it is adjacent or right off of Hamilton Road. It does not come all the way back to the park. It does not come into the parkland. It does not include anything in the confines of the park per se. Correct.
Okay, any other questions? So we've got a mover and we've got a seconder, so I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Okay, so carried. Now we're moving on to the consent agenda, and first I'm going to ask the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on January 10th, 2022 be approved as circulated. Looking for a mover for the minutes. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? And then moving on to the consent agenda. So 10.2 to 10.5 be received as information unless there's something specific that council wishes to discuss. We can pull out. If not, will it go as a group for all of those? Okay. So moving all together, looking for a mover. Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All in favor? So carried. No unfinished business, no notice of motion, no new business, no closed session. Moving on to bylaws, looking for a motion that bylaw 7/2021 be given first and second reading. So looking for that motion. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Okay. And then bylaw 8/2021 be adopted as presented. Looking for a mover. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? Okay. And then moving on to bylaw 7/2022 being a bylaw to provide for drainage works in the municipality of Thames Centre. Oh, sorry, did it. Moving on to bylaw 8/2022 being confirmatory. Oh my gosh, I'm so far ahead of myself. I'm going to meet myself coming back. Looking now at the meeting schedule, I haven't done that one yet. Monday, February 14th, 2022, we have a special meeting at 9 a.m., which is a visioning session. And then moving on to 16.1, we have the request to change meeting from Monday, April 11th, 2022 to Monday, April 4th, 2022 regarding the conference that was changed to the Ontario Good Roads Association conference date. So looking for a mover for that. Deputy Mayor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Hunter. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, and now we're looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Hunter, seconded by Deputy Mayor Elliott. All in favor? And we're closing now at 7:43 p.m.